No. Okay. Sick.
We have not done a live podcast yet.
We're gonna start. Do you guys get a lot of traction with those?
We've only ever done one.
Okay.
What we do is when we post them on YouTube, we set them as a premiere so that people can like watch it, as it happens, and there can be like a live chat and stuff. But we only did one live stream. We're actually going to do a live stream on Friday. They're good for like engagement with the fans and stuff like that. But I always find them to be like, I don't know. I don't watch live streams. I'm not a fucking.
You're not a streamer. I mean? You're not a fucking streamer.
I'm not a fucking streamer, dude. Like sometimes I'll like I'll put on something like clips from Hassan or something, but I'm gonna watch a fucking 8-hour stream. What am I? Child?
Kind of creepy too when you kind of think about it.
Yeah,
just watching somebody for 8 hours.
For 8 hours,
and they don't know you personally.
No, but they think they do. That's the worst part.
Yeah, and you have no idea what they're doing as you're going live in the privacy of their own home.
They could be jacking off.
They could be.
They should
most
be.
likely. I mean, that's what I do when I no, but it's you know, weird. it's like a political OnlyFans. If it's
that's literally what it is. And it's like, hey, more power to you.
Do your thing.
Sex work is real work.
It is real work. Oh.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
What are we doing?
What are we doing here?
What's going on?
What's going on?
Crazy Jews.
Hell yeah.
Speaking of Jews.
Crazy Jews.
Love your podcast, by the way.
Thanks, man. It's fun. It's fun to do. It's fun.
I'm gonna get this thing jacked off. Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, family. Welcome to Colonial Outcast. I'm sorry, Greg. Do you want to say something before I read the intro?
No.
Okay. All right, family. Welcome to Colonial Outcast, the problematic podcast that is not yet self-aware, and scientists at the Pentagon are scrambling with their top men to keep it that way. Founded by Greg Stoker, a former Army 75th Ranger Regiment super genius, and myself, a former Army National Guardsman and Army Officer School dropout who also almost became an IDF soldier once upon a time. True story, and we'll get into that later. With none other than
that's a hell of a flex, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I'll explain why I'm opening this way in the most, and we'll get into that later with none other than Matt Lieb, host of the most moral podcast ever, Bad Hasbara, one of the most dynamic podcasts I've listened to. It has the perfect ballet of the most witty comedy, sensually intertwined with vital information and insights on the most interesting topics concerning everything surrounding Palestine, culture, propaganda, and the overall fuckery of our current system, and a lot of other pertinent arenas of our society. Matt Lieb is a comedian, writer, and actor from Los Angeles. As a stand-up comedian in San Francisco, he was named...
Oh, you don't have to read my whole intro. I beg you not to.
2016.
You're gonna sit here.
This is an old bio, dude.
No, you're gonna sit
there and take it.
Take our podcast.
I really got to update my website. This is talking about like an SF Gate article from 2016.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I just Googled it. Like, where's this fucker Matt Lieb?
Who's this fucking Matt Lieb?
Bio is. But worst of all, he's a goddamn Jew.
Yeah, I'm
the
a goddamn
kind
Jew.
Too.
Yeah.
He's one of them anti-Zionist, self-hating Jews.
I'm a capo. Hey, take my family,
Capo.
please.
Goddamn capo.
Hey, capo
Here's what's
regime.
interesting, though, and what really caught my attention about Matt, beside his stand-up being fucking hilarious, I once heard him tell some of his life story, and it struck me that him and I happen to share some commonalities in our life stories. Besides both of us pursuing and acting in LA and being involved in the film industry, he and I were both once proud members of the Church of Scientology, founded by none other than L. Ron Herzl. We both lived in Israel. We were both heavily propagandized, and we both eventually woke the fuck up from years of psychological manipulation. The key difference, however, in our stories is that Matt escaped from Jewish Zionist branch of evolution, while I escaped the evangelical Christian Zionist branch of evolution.
That's right.
there's going to be some parallels in our stories and plenty of differences.
Yeah.
Matt, welcome to our quaint niche podcast.
Happy to be here. I did not live in Israel. I want to
You weren't at a kibbutz?
No, that was Daniel. My co-host Daniel lived in Israel for like 10 months, which
good job, Mark. You really fucked
that up. Goddamn Google.
Everything else was good.
So yeah, and just so everybody knows, I'm just here for random commentary that's probably not going to be helpful to the conversation.
Good.
So,
that's what podcasting is.
Greg has actually always been kind of fascinated with my
Jews
evangelical background because he did not come from that background. So he's kind of looking from the outside in, and he's never been a part of Zionism.
I'm fascinated by the evangelical, like, Christian Zionist background. Like, to me, that is I've never fully understood it as anything other than just playing the long game of, like, being friends with the Jews for just long enough to get them to go to Israel so that Jesus could come back, which just seems like, I don't know, that seems like too much planning ahead for most, like, regular people. So it can't just be that, right?
It's more nuanced, but I do enjoy hearing that take on it, though, because it needs to be said that a lot of evangelicals are just like, yo, we need to get these Jews in the Holy Land so we can get the Messiah coming back. What I always say is that it's funny because Zionist Jews are using Christians for like military support, and they don't like them either. Christian Zionists are using Jews to bring back the Messiah so they get eradicated. It's really funny how both sides are using each other for their equal eradication. Hilarious.
Yes. I will say that at least from the Jewish Zionist perspective, they're being Machiavellian, and it's actually rooted in, like, the real world. So there's that.
Well, that's the interesting thing about it is they're both Machiavellian. Both plans are about stabbing each other in the back. It's just the one plan is, makes more sense from, like, a logic standpoint and, like, a timeline standpoint, whereas the other one, I'm just like, man, do Christians really think it's just around the corner, like this whole Jesus coming back thing? Like, that's crazy.
Well, it really comes down to profit to risk ratio,
right? Exactly, and I feel like the risk seems pretty high there.
Also, it's not going to happen this year. Jesus ain't coming down from the USS Enterprise this year because they missed the window for the red heifer sacrifice.
They did. The red heifer. That's a great point. Yeah, we did miss the window on that, and I believe that red heifer is too old. Plus the possibility that those red heifers may have been molested by the ranch hands in Texas.
I think that's okay.
Which would make them non-kosher.
Oh, is that right?
No, they have to be virgins.
They got to be virgin red heifers.
Virgin red heifers, not poked by Uncle Bob.
There's so much about, like, Third Temple Zionism and, like, its mix of, like, Christian evangelicalism that I have yet to, like, do a deep dive into because I'm so it's just so out there that I'm like, there's Zionists going on TV being like, rape is good, and I'm like, I gotta cover that. He just said rape's good, But please,
well, this is historical then. This is your opportunity,
and that's what makes it such an
interesting dynamic.
I'm here to learn.
I mean, and by the way, this is the first conversation I'm having with a former Zionist.
Oh, you
face to face. I've seen, like, comments, TikTok lives, audio, but never met face to face another former Zionist.
Oh, damn! So I feel like I'm the representative, and I'm not like the best representative because I feel like there are people who were deep into it, like way deeper than I was. That have gotten out, and I feel like those guys probably have more interesting story than me. My story is essentially
so you were a Boy Scout. You were an Eagle Scout Zionist. You were at that low level.
I was what I would consider more Zionist than the American Standard Zionist, but less Zionist than, like, the you know, I would say the super religious Jews.
The Kahana ones.
Well, yeah, certainly less Zionist than the Kahanas.
By the way, that was a great episode with you and David Sheen.
Oh, David Sheen is amazing.
Love that episode.
He is just a wellspring of knowledge about the darkest shit, and it is fascinating.
We know.
By the way, audience, go check out that episode on Bad Hasbara with David Sheen. At the very least, go watch that. It will pop open your brain to so much nuance of what's going on in Israel. David Sheen's
we are here for the brain pops for the most part, and I don't think it's too bad a thing if you weren't that deep into Zionism, because unlike you two who are here to learn, I just want everyone to know that I'm not. I'm just here to talk shit.
Yeah, you're just here to talk shit.
Yeah. Cool.
But feel free to ask questions that you have always been curious about, because I realize that this is very alien territory for you, Greg, and I want the audience to go through your POV of this, who are not familiar with the ins and outs of Zionism. So
yeah, because Greg grew up in the like Church of Satan and like
he's
listening to Slayer. So it's like, you know,
I mean, I don't want to get too into it. Not the biggest Slayer fan, but yes, essentially.
Okay, what don't you like about Slayer?
Oh my!
It's too vanilla for him. That's what it is. It's
yeah. Let's talk about that the whole episode.
I want to let's dive into this though, man. Okay, walk me through your childhood and in the context of your upbringing that kind of was surrounded by Zionism. How?
Well, so like I said, my the Zionism that I grew up with, I would consider to be like a few degrees above most American standard issue Zionism. The difference being that whereas with most Americans, you know, you just kind of the default is, I believe Israel has a right to exist, and I believe that's because of the history of what happened to the Jews in Europe during the Holocaust, and also European history in general with regards to Jews. That's like American standard issue Zionism. Like, yeah, of course I support, you know, Israel. With me, obviously, it was different because I am Jewish and not religiously so just through blood. And, you know, I come from a secular family. And so because I didn't have, you know, any religious training or anything growing up, Zionism was kind of the replacement for, you know, religious training. Like the religious part of being a Jew was not as important as the ethnic identity of it. And so Zionism is similar in that sense, because Zionism isn't about, you can be an atheist Jew and still be eligible under the law of return in Israel, you know? So it was just like, you know, Jews being blood Jews is the reason why Hitler, you know, killed Jews, right? So therefore, Israel is the antidote to Hitlerism and Nazism. Like, we need Israel because someday we're all going to have to go there and live there, because when the Nazis eventually come back to power, you know, in whatever
they
form
might
it
start
takes.
blowing up our hospitals and our schools, and,
right? Exactly,
and
which is completely unheard of, like evil atrocities that, you know, we are obviously against. So yeah, it was like for me, it was something that was I took as a matter of course. Like, yeah, you know, it's just Israel is good because Israel provides protection for Jews from all over the world, so that we can one day move there. And it was I kind of just assumed like every group had a version of that. It was like, you know, once like you know, the British come back to power, I'm sure like there'll be a law of return for the Irish in America, you know, like all the Irish will make aliyah to Ireland, and, you know, fucking have their own little safe state there. I never interrogated how weird it was to have kind of like a plan B, and to have that plan B be someone else's like home, you know what I mean? So so I grew up with what I would consider like an ethnic like pride in being Jewish, and then also a Zionism that reflected that kind of ethnic thing. You know, it was like,
Gotcha.
hey, a land for us. You know what I mean?
So you would try to rock the Jufro a little
I
more.
wouldn't try. That's natural. It just
That's
happens.
just there.
Yeah.
You would
No.
grow it out though sometimes. And
Oh, I mean, it would grow out, but only because I would forget to cut my hair. Like I didn't like. I grew up in a very Jewish city. I grew up in Los Angeles, so I wasn't like out here, you know, wearing a fucking Star of David, and you know, like had like a fucking Hamza tattoo or whatnot. Like I was just, we were just all fucking, you know. I thought everyone was Jewish. Actually, I thought like the world was 50% Jews, 50% Christians.
yeah.
So I was like, you know, that's so there wasn't like a it wasn't a as a kid like this part of me that I felt where I was like felt otherized in any way, in the way that like Jews who grow up in as like minorities in whatever place they're from
Right.
you know, probably feel. So I never had the feeling of like I never felt like a minority, even though technically by demographic numbers I was a minority, and that's because I am a white man.
Right.
And that's kind of the thing about America is you know, if you're white, you, whether or not you're Jewish, you're gonna feel like a white guy.
Yeah.
So
just
my
how it
question:
works.
were you West Coast Zionist or East Coast?
Oh, West Coast. I grew up in
Oh,
Los Angeles, you know. I was
okay,
Kendrick, you know.
okay,
I'm a
yeah.
Tupac over Biggie.
Okay, awesome. You know, because the East Coast Zionists are getting a little crazy up in New York City. I don't know if you saw that NYU just made the term
Zionism.
a protected like
Yeah.
protected class.
Yeah.
That's
So
hilarious.
so Christians can be Zionists, right? So does that
Yes.
mean they get to be protected too?
100%. That's what it has to mean. And you know, and that is also part
Because
of the
you're born
point.
with it. You can't help it. You're just born that
Right,
way.
exactly. You know, you come out your mom's pussy and you're just like,
Just
oh, I'm
Israel has a
trying
right to
find-"
exist.
all over me.
Israel
God, I
has a
can't
right to
change
exist.
it. It's who I am.
Yeah, yeah. You just come out there just yelling slurs about Palestinians.
Human shields.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're from secular Zionism. I didn't know that.
Mhm.
That was one detail that slipped through the crack. I thought you might have gone either way, you know.
No, yeah, secular. Just or you know, secular. I grew up secular.
So it's like your standard boilerplate form of Zionism.
Standard
in a general,
boilerplate,
got it.
right? Exactly. The difference being that the benefits of Zionism are something that I can have. You know what I mean? Based on being Jewish. So it was like it wasn't. And this is, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but like I'm not really sure what the benefit of Zionism is to Christians, like other than, you know, like we were talking about before, this kind of this long con that leads to the apocalypse. Like I don't understand being a fervent, especially, you know, as a youth, being a fervent Zionist as a Christian. Whereas I get being defensive of Zionism as a kid, because if someone as a kid had criticized Israel, I would have been like, well, fuck you. You're criticizing like the place that you're criticizing the place that I need to go to, that I've been told is like this inevitability for me and for all Jews.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Christian Zionism makes no sense from any type of survivalist perspective.
Right.
It's simply, and to answer your question though, about like, to kind of give you some insight into Christian Zionism, it all comes down to mythology.
Right.
And the myth, like, so in order to enforce the belief in the end times prophecies, which most evangelical churches build their base on, believe it or not, you even have like the way that evangelical churches often do it. You know, you have your Sunday service, obviously, but then you have your Wednesday night service. Now, Wednesday night service, it all comes down to Wednesday night. I think all this shit boils down to Wednesday night, and I'll tell you why.
I didn't even know there was a Wednesday night.
There's a Wednesday night service. It's in the evening as opposed to the morning. Now, the Wednesday night service is dedicated to end times prophecy and putting all of this religion that we practice, all this crazy worship we do, and proselytization, it's all a motivator. It enforces that to believe that, guys, we're living in the end times. We got to start getting the word of God out there, getting some new recruits for this cult. And because Jesus is coming back and we got to support Israel, we got to go reach, we got to do outreach to the Jews and support the Israel's right to exist.
Right.
And as you can see, you have the ancient Persian Empire, which is Iran, is attacking the ancient Israelites. And then you have so you use the modern day conflicts happening in the Western Asia, and you superimpose that with prophecy, and it just makes you feel a lot better that you are living in that time period as a Christian. But it gives you purpose.
Is that every Wednesday? Like
at least the churches I went to, man.
Damn,
and these
that's
were
crazy.
Big mega churches.
So Sunday it would just be like they would do, hey, we're gonna do some songs. We're gonna talk about being a good Samaritan or whatever, and then fucking Wednesday they're like, okay, guys, prophecy time. So
here's why you are alive. Here's your very fucking purpose to be on this planet, is because you're living in the end time. So what it does is it gives Christians a context for their whole reason of living in this time period. So it really instills a sense of purpose. It is fucking crazy. And I bought into it because we're talking like age 13 is when I really started to get into Zionism. And that was because I was going to a mega church this is in Kansas City, when my dad was stationed at Fort Leavenworth as a chaplain. We were trying to find a church to go to because we moved around a lot. I lived in like 5 different states. So every time we would move, my family would have to go do some scouting for a decent church that we'd go to. Well, we picked a church called Sheffield Family Life Center, which was this mega church, right? And this mega church was really big on end times prophecy and really big on Zionism in Israel.
And you guys were like, perfect.
Yeah. Now, mind you, my parents weren't like big Zionists. They were just trying to find a fucking church. But at age 14 and 13 and 14, I'm like a sponge. They're adults. They're not as, spongy, I guess.
Right.
I'm a sponge. And I'm a little kid like, oh my gosh, we're in the end times. I'm reading all kinds of books.
Yeah.
About the
Hell
end
yeah. No more teachers. No more books.
Jerking off to like,
end times.
It was fucking great. And so Israel gets brought up obviously on Wednesday nights, and putting everything that's happening in that region in the context of the book of Revelations. So the book of Revelation plays a pivotal role in Christian Zionism.
I just want to say though,
go ahead.
Yeah, as a kid though, like it's kind of, the rapture is like literally the lamest post-apocalyptic fantasy to have as a kid.
I know. There's not even like
there's like
lasers and shit.
Yeah, there's like Terminator.
Yeah,
there's like Mad Max.
Right.
There's like, if you're into zombies, there's that. There's alien invasion. But no, the fucking rapture.
No. I disagree. Is
there a war in the rapture, or is it just
No. It gets badass. You're totally off, Greg. They got flying locusts that can shoot steam from their tails. And they sound like it. They got some cool shit in Book of Revelation, some gnarly shit, like the earth opening up and then a big horde of locust demons coming out in steam.
Oh, that's sick.
It gets fucking pretty. It gets pretty metal, bro. You
I
might want to check it out, dog.
Yeah,
check it out. Check out the fucking locust, homie.
Yeah,
it gets gnarly.
That's what we say in the metal scene: dog and homie.
Yeah, listen. I don't know. What do you guys say?
I gotta study your nomenclature so I can be more. I can assimilate.
Yeah, but so like it just. I'm sorry, but it like, because there's so many Christian Zionists that like all I can think is like, well, in general, my worldview is the vast majority of people of any group are like normal people, just like fucking living their lives, and like they believe in something, but it doesn't take precedence over 1,000 other things they got to fucking do. Yeah. So there's so many Christian Zionists that I just like, it's hard for me to grasp the practicalities of Zionism in Christianity being that widespread, being such a big thing, because it's like, I mean, how much prep for the end times are we doing here on your day to day? You know what I mean? Like everyone's got a
I
to-do list. You know, they
I
gotta,
I
I gotta
I
get
really think
groceries. I gotta put
I
gas in the car. I gotta think about how we're gonna get those
yeah.
Jews to Israel. Like it's fucking wild to me.
Well, the United States, Americans in general are really we're kind of brought up in a very cinematic universe,
Yeah,
like
that's
with
true.
movies, Hollywood, fan fiction, fiction.
Yeah,
So because of that, we get this modus of thinking that's geared towards fantastic events happening in our lives. Like you look at
sure.
Marvel's Avengers, you know, it's I think that Hollywood has something to do with it a little bit by constantly getting us to think of like the grandiose picture of
Yeah,
humanity
and
and
stories in general, you know, like
yeah,
everyone, I think,
mythology.
you know, whether or not there's, you know, you're watching movies, everyone wants something like a more interesting life than they have, or something to happen, you know, to make them, you know, it's just, I think it's totally like I don't even think it's like narcissism. It's just like that's what life is. Life is fucking, you know, wanting something to happen, you know,
It's a purpose. It's the need
a
for purpose,
purpose.
and
Yeah.
that's what evangelicalism feeds
Yeah.
on.
I
It
get
feeds
that.
on
I get
people
that.
in yeah, and now for me, it's a little different because it's not like it's just me being a young kid and not and just trying to figure out where my place is in the world because I grew up religious in private Christian schools,
Hmm.
and um, so that so Wednesday night they talk about, you know, like we grew up learning about the Israelites and
Right.
therefore the Jews, and
Of
we
course. Of
equate the
course.
two, which are, by the way, are not the same.
Right.
Israelites and Jews, it's way more nuanced than that.
Hmm.
So because of that, because we're fed these stories, these fantastic stories about the Israelites conquering and the relationship between God and the Israelites finding
Hmm.
redemption and then being scattered through the four corners of the world and then coming
Right.
back, it really you really feel like it gives you the sense that you're part of the Bible storyline, right? So
Right.
now while most kids going to church would probably be like, oh, that's cool, and then they would kind of move on with their life like a fucking
Right.
normal kid, like
Right. Right.
Greg. Instead, I got fucking into it more than most
Sure.
normal kids, more than my family. I mean, my family is just like, yeah, cool Zionism, but like me, I was like, fuck yeah, I'm going to Israel. I'm gonna fight with the ancient
Yeah. Yeah.
Israelites.
You
Yeah.
know what?
And
You know what this? You know what this sounds like? This
oh,
sounds like a great fantasy to have if you're not allowed to read actual fantasy books because
Yeah.
they're from the devil.
Yeah. You're
yeah,
only allowed to read one book. Then the Bible is the most dope book you've ever read.
Yeah.
No, but I mean,
yeah,
I get that from a, if you actually like, you know, if you're being told, especially as a kid, like this
mhm,
Bible stuff isn't just like parables and like fables to help you, you know, lead a better life and, you know, get
yeah,
closer to God. If you're being told this is like, oh no, this is some real shit and we got to like practically plan our lives around it, I
yeah.
absolutely believe that a kid can be like, fuck yeah, I want to go fucking support Israel and we got to,
Mhm.
you know, fight against you know, the ancient Persian Empire.
And
uh
Magog, Gog and Magog, don't forget about them.
yeah, exactly. Like I get that. You know, it's just I don't know, if
It's
I'm the parents,
crusadism.
I'm like,
It's
hey,
I think that it has to do. I think it's very similar to the mentality during the Crusader period. The Crusader
sure.
period, obviously, you had a bunch of peasants in Europe who wanted to find better purpose than just being slaves on
Oh,
a feudalistic
interesting.
society.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't
so,
actually
so
know that much about the Crusades. That's interesting. I didn't realize that.
yeah, they're peasants who wanted purpose, and then the Pope comes out and be like, "You want purpose? Oh, I'll give you purpose. Let's go to the Holy
Go
Land. Let's
conquer
build big
Constantinople or whatever.
well, let's go conquer Jerusalem, the
Yeah.
place of our Lord, the holy city, Jerusalem. And
Yeah.
that's that spirit of that modus operandi of thinking in the crusader like mentality is so present, if not more, in today's age. In fact, I
Mm.
think it's even more potent than it was back then, the Crusader period, because we're talking about trillions of dollars worth of advanced weaponry. Has a lot bigger effect than it had back then. At least back then, you had Saladin to whoop our ass from doing that
Yeah,
shit.
yeah, that's right. That's
So
right.
we at
Shout
least
out to
had
Saladin.
Saladin back then to kind of calm that shit down. But
Yeah,
not today. We best we have is Erdogan. What's he
I
fucking doing?
know.
You know what I mean?
Kind of a
Goddamn
bitch.
Erdogan. He needs to step it up. But anyways,
Yeah, you're not
so
gonna do nothing.
I went to Israel
How long did you
in
live
my
there for?
9 months total.
Okay,
So
okay.
I needed an excuse. This is straight out of high school. So this
Mhm.
is So mind you, I'm graduating high school from Area 52, they call it, or Dugway Proving Ground. It's a military. They consider it. They call it Area 52, but
because it's like there's not aliens, but they're like maybe gonna have some alien shit or what?
I heard all kinds of crazy shit from the
okay.
scientists who kind of the civilians who lived in there's a thing called English Village, which is the civilian sector where these personnel live, and they have a commissary, they have a gym and all that good stuff.
Oh, that's
and then
sick.
my dad was the installation chaplain on the base, so I kind of knew a lot of the scientists, and you hear kind of crazy shit. So that's where I spent my high school years. I'm in the desert in the middle of fucking Utah on an experimental base where they test anthrax and shit. So I'm like ready to get out there in the world. So I tell my parents, hey, I want to go to Jerusalem. I want to study at Hebrew University. They said, cool, Mark, I support you. This fucking kid's fucking crazy, but okay, we support you. So I go to the summer Ulpan program at Hebrew University, right? And I'm excited, dude. I'm like, I'm going to Jerusalem. All these stories I was taught as a kid, I'm about to be a part of it. I'm going to join the IDF. I'm gonna be a part of that fucking that fight against evil from her, you know. And then when I get there, that's when things just because you're taught that Israel is like Disneyland for Jews.
Right.
It's like, oh boy, I'm gonna go there and Jews are gonna be studying the Torah. Oh golly. You get there and it's like, it's not Disneyland for Jews.
Oh, it's a bunch of douchebags. I mean, it's just like any place, except for there's this, whole thing where they're not looking at like a big portion of the country. Like, don't ignore that over there.
Yeah. Don't worry about the West Bank.
But Bank, so what was it? So when you say, that what happened? I want to know what happened. What they do.
So I get to Jerusalem and I'm totally psyched. And by the way, I do fall in love with Jerusalem. Like that.
That's a beautiful city
for me. It's I love that will never change. That part I did not overestimate my mind. I underestimated it because Jerusalem is gorgeous and it's always in my heart. So when you get there, now mind you, on the plane ride, this is the first time I'm around Jews like that. Jews are like mythological creatures in my head up until this point.
That's right. Yeah.
I grew up on military bases. There's not that many Jewish families in the military. Maybe now there is, but at the time I was not around Jews like that. And to me, they were just mythological creatures flapping their wings up in the sky.
Right. Yeah.
No context. So I'm on a plane.
I like it though, but because in this case, this is a good thing. Like the mythological creatures have like wings and not horns, which maybe the one perk of like Christian evangelical Zionism.
No, they got Jew superpowers.
Yeah, that they're like superpowers. It's just
what?
Yeah,
Greg zoned out for like 5 minutes and he's totally lost.
Wait, are you saying they have Jupiter powers?
They have Jupiter powers.
That's actually the more accurate nomenclature.
Yeah.
Jupiter powers. That's right, Greg.
Able to raise federal interest rates in a single bound.
So I did not even know about Jewish stereotypes until I heard it from Jewish students on the plane.
We love talking about it. It's like the funniest.
Jewish American students. And they're talking anti-Semitic as fuck. I'm like, God damn, you guys are why are you talking about yourself like that? You guys are the holy people. What do you mean you guys love? Stop talking like that. You're special. You're in the Bible. It was fucking shocking to me how anti-Semitic Jews talk about themselves. It's so self-deprecating.
It is absolutely one of our favorite things to do. And it's like one of the more annoying things about I don't know. As soon as I left Los Angeles, I went to UC Santa Cruz for school, and I remember that's when I discovered like, there's very, very few Jews. I mean, there were Jews in the school, but I was used to like every other person was Jew.
Yeah. Right.
And instead, there was just like there were some people who were like, wow, this is like exotic, and I was like, oh, for real, sick. And then I would do the same jokes that I always did. But then I started feeling uncomfortable with it because I was like getting laughs, but I was like, wait, didn't you say I was the first Jew you've ever met? How do you know these stereotypes?
Right.
You shouldn't like these jokes. And then that's when I, first started kind of realizing that I was like, oh man, like it is a little weird to be in a world where your jokes the laugh that you get on your jokes is a little different than it
More
would be
demeaning.
around like
It's more like
yeah, it feels a little more like, you know, I'm tap dancing, you know. It's
Right.
the
Yeah.
shucking and the jiving. But you know, obviously I think for other reasons now it's even more important to to reclaim self-deprecation, because in the last like 11 months I've never seen so many people, mostly Israelis, but a lot of Jews in America too, take themselves so fucking seriously and start crying about anti-Semitism in ways that I'm just like, we have made the most horrible jokes together, and now you're like, wow, you know, it's just so
that's
anti-Semitic the
redline,
way.
guys.
Yeah.
Saying that Israel is bribing our politicians.
Yeah, right.
How could you paint every single Jew like
Yeah,
that?
it's like no, I'm not.
Yeah, it's insane, dude. It's insane the convolution between anti-Zionism and Jew hatred.
So you growing up, you're like, because you didn't know Jewish people, you knew about them through like the
mythology.
Bible. Yeah, mythology in the Bible, and like
Right.
you know, the Wednesday night, you know, sessions or whatever.
Exactly.
So were there anything negative said about Jews at all growing up?
I can honestly say that what was unique about my childhood, especially I think being in the military community, which is very one thing I will say positive about the military community, especially in like, I guess like the on base type of living. I'm not talking about like what we've done overseas, but
yeah,
they're very good at quelling racism and any type of that stuff. Like if you go to a military school, they will those teachers will crack down on you if you spew any type of racism. So that's one thing that the military community, at least in the civilian world, military community is very good at. And of course, growing up in churches, the churches I grew up, they put Jews on a pedestal. So I experienced anti-Semitism, but not in the negative form, more or less the romanticizing mythological
philosemitism, it's called. Yeah.
Philosemitism.
Philosemitism, which is another form of anti-Semitism, but it's you know, people don't see it as such. It's like when they say like, I'm not racist against Asians, I think they're good at math. It's just like that is
which by the way, philosemitism or whatever you call it, I'm very guilty of. I am flat out very guilty of that because I did in my mind.
I don't blame you for being philosemitic. Right. You were raised in a philosemitic ideology.
Exactly. So I get there, we arrive, I'm in Jerusalem, and we go to the student office, I guess they call it. We line up, and then they give us a number. They assign us our dorm and our room number, right? So they assign me my room number, and there's only one non-Jew on the plane with me, and his name was I won't say his name, but he was an ex-Marine, Christian evangelical as well, super Zionist. And we happened to we became kind of like best buds. And we wound up on the same dorm floor. So we both get our number, we get to know each other. And both of us kind of felt a little out of place because all of the Jewish kids on the plane, like were connected in some way. And they knew all kinds of, they had their own community and clique. And we were kind of like, we're the only non-Jews here. This is interesting. So it's like, you're the only Christian on this plane. All right, we're buddies. And they happened to assign us the same dorm floor. I think that was on purpose. So we get to the dorm floor, and this is and when I tell you that my whole life changed on that night, then my first night in Jerusalem, I'm speaking literally. We get there, and I hear yelling coming out of one of the rooms. I go to my dorm floor. My roommate happened to be a Belarusian Jew who immigrated, and he was fighting to stay in his program so he wouldn't have to join the IDF. And then the rest were all Palestinian Muslims, believe it or not. And one of the rooms, you had a bunch of Palestinian Muslim dudes smoking hookah and eating hummus and then talking really loud. Now, while I was brainwashed into Islamophobia, my personality type is that I like to go into the danger zone, even if I'm brainwashed. And so first thing I do is I crack it.
Fucking Kenny Loggins over here just tearing through the dormitory.
So I hear them yelling and their doors open and I walk in. First thing I said is, "What's up, you terrorist motherfuckers?" And then first thing I said, and by the way, The dudes that I say this to will
Yeah.
wind up becoming my best friends for life to this day.
Yeah, no,
My
I kind of
closest friends.
Yeah.
And so I said, "What's up, you terrorist motherfuckers?" Now I always tell the story because a third of that room wanted to whoop my ass for obvious reasons. The second was laughing. This is the other third, and then the other third wanted to kick my ass, but also thought it was kind of funny and actually kind of wanted to get to know me a little bit. And first night, we're fucking arguing. What are we arguing about? Israel, George Bush, why America's so fucking great, why they're fucking, and a bunch of Islamophobic shit, and we're fucking yelling, and we're also cracking jokes somehow. And they're not the type of dude. They weren't like, get the fuck out of here, you piece of shit. No, they were like, come here and fucking sit down and argue with me about this shit.
Yeah. Here's some coffee, asshole.
Here's some coffee. Here's some
smoke this hookah, you son of a bitch. Yeah.
And it was, dude, I'm like, dude, these guys are fucking fun.
Yeah.
And I love arguing with them. And out of those arguments came like, and first thing I said was like, I heard my church told me that Islam means submission. Submission. And then one of my Palestinian friends goes, to God, you dumb shit. To God. And I'm just like,
yeah, like, oh wait, I do that.
I never thought of it that way before.
I never thought of it that way.
That's crazy.
Oh, I heard. I
heard this is a land without people, where people had a land.
Yeah, why don't you all stop picking on the Jews? And they're like, okay, here we're gonna go. Day one guy. We gotta get it. We have a day one guy here. Got a day one guy here. Let's
here we go. So now, did they put you on it was the whole floor was you, a Belarusian Jew, and Palestinian Muslims? Was that your dorm floor?
And a Marine. And
a Marine.
My Marine. Yeah.
And did you visit all the other like floors, and there was just like, were they like all Jews? Oh, okay.
Okay. So above and below us. So I was on the second floor. All the other floors were Israelis and American Jews mixed.
Oh, okay.
So we were the loudest floor.
Yeah.
We were the most non-Jewish floor.
Yeah.
And we were the floor that was known to be the biggest pranksters. And I could tell you a story where me and this Marine, we would fuck around. We were just like on a playground. Like Israel was our playground. We were misogynistic towards Jewish girls and Israeli girls, of course. Like, yeah, look at that Yehudi booty, damn. Like we would so we were bad. We were bad, dude. We were I was so misogynistic to Israeli chicks. It was terrible. I wouldn't repeat the things, but we would for example,
so you were a college kid, and also you were a fanatic who had just flown there so you could join the army of God. So I expect
well, at the same time, kind of like seeing these Israelis as like inferior to me, because like I'm paying their fucking
right. Oh, interesting. Oh,
you're our bitches, dude. So I could walk around as a cocky American and just be like, man, fuck you. I pay your fucking your healthcare and
I pay your tuition.
So I could be degrading too. So anyways, me and this
jokes
Marine,
on you because I don't have shit.
Yeah. Exactly. I haven't paid taxes yet.
It's like, oh. So me and my Marine buddy, we would like do some crazy shit. Like we would take like pieces of thawed out kebabs, and we would just chuck them out the second floor window at like random people walking, because there's a tree that blocked the view, so nobody could see who's throwing it. And we would throw shit, and then like one of them hit somebody, and we go, hey, we're like, oh shit. Turns out it was one of the Palestinian dudes who was on our dorm floor, who was walking back to his dorm. So he got in there. He's like, dude, I just got hit with the kebab. And I'm like, really? That's crazy, dude. Who was it? And he was like, did you do it?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I did it. He's like, give me those kebabs. So now it's me, a Marine, and a Palestinian both throwing fucking kebabs at fucking Israeli kids walking on the sidewalk. So anyways, that just gives you a little picture of what our life
that's
became.
Like your PLO origin story.
And I will say there is one accurate stereotype about Palestinians.
Yeah.
They love throwing shit, and I get it. I get it, dude, because it is fucking throwing shit at Israelis is the funnest shit ever, because you'll hear occasionally like, oh, my so and I totally get it. I love it. I love throwing shit too because of them. And smoking cigarettes because of the goddamn Palestinians who got me hooked on nicotine.
Damn.
So it was cigarettes, hookah, hummus.
Hell yeah.
And
Okay.
that contentious so that first night, literally, and I'm not exaggerating here, it deprogrammed about 5 years of propaganda in those 3
Interesting.
hours of arguing. And that's how easy it was. And it was because they were just so goddamn hospitable, and they were so honest, and they did not allow ignorance to get between us. They were so patient with my ignorance, but they were very honest and brutal about it. It's like, you're
Yeah.
a fucking dumb shit, don't you know? And it was
Yeah.
cussing. It was a bond that was forming. It's like, I
Yeah.
can't cuss at, I can't argue with people like this anywhere else.
Yeah.
I can't yell at people like that. I mean, this is awesome. Like, so
Yeah.
I wound up going and visiting their villages and staying with their families in the different Palestinian villages. And
were these in like in Israel within 48, or was there also in the West Bank?
A lot of them had families in the West Bank as well. So a lot of these they call them Israeli Arabs, which I hate that term,
I know that,
because you're completely eradicating the part that they're Palestinian. I call them Palestinians with Israeli citizenship. That's the way I say it.
Right.
So,
yes.
And mind you, this is 2005. So 2005, I would say, was kind of like a more calm period as far as
It was post Second Intifada, pre Gaza. Well, when was the pullout? 2005, wasn't it? The pullout of settlements?
That's when I arrived. Literally, the day I've arrived was when they were starting to pull out.
Yeah,
the day I arrived, which was, I think, June, July.
They pull out and you pull in.
So it was a calmer period.
So here's that question I have, because I think one of the issues, like growing up with this kind of with the ideology that you have of like philosemitism, and this is one of the reasons why I find it why it is also anti-Semitism, is because of how easy that kind of thing can switch, because it still like otherizes Jews, but just in a different way. So was there part of you when you go to Israel, you learn that Palestinians are indeed human beings, and then you also, I assume, see the way in which Palestinians are treated within the society, and going like, damn, like this seems like there's something else going on over here.
Yes.
I can see it, of course, translating into kind of if not hatred of Israelis, at least a criticism of them, as whatever's below hatred. That doesn't sound bad, but did you find yourself also applying that to all Jews? Was there some programming there that you've had to like get over, where you have to separate the idea of Zionism and all Jews, like Jews in the West, or even Jews within Israel who have who are leftists and have critiques, as small as their numbers may be?
That's a great question. And what's interesting about that is it was actually seeing the progression of the American Jewish students that I traveled with to Israel and that were in my program, and seeing them also becoming disillusioned from the reality. See, a lot of them were like yourself, secular Zionist or religious Zionist. There's a few fanatical guys in the student body. But what's interesting about what I noticed about the American Jewish students is that as I was becoming disillusioned, I also noticed that they were kind of like, whoa, what the fuck? Because they had also been
brainwashed,
mythologizing Israel, and they saw it. And what's interesting is I noticed that the American Jewish students didn't really hang out with the Israelis that much after a while. They were kind of like, these guys are fucking weird, dude.
Yes.
Like, their culture is not what we thought it was, and they were cliquey. Like me, I'm the type of guy that'll hang out with everybody, and I actually hung out with Israelis more than the American Jews did, because I wanted to. So I was like a what do you call it? I was a double agent, man. I would hang out with Palestinians by day, party with the Israelis by night.
Sure.
And I was able to see this from a bird's eye view, and I also hung out with the American Jewish students, and I'm like, it's interesting to see how the American Jews and the Israeli Jews just started to kind of, and because they grew, a lot of them are liberals,
right?
So a lot of them grew up around civil rights and involved in that. So for them to see this treatment of Palestinians is like, dude, this does not go with our brand back at home. So I don't know if we want to be.
Yeah, right. You guys are kind of fucking up like the things that I tell everyone
Right.
back at home about how fucking Israel is great and
Yeah.
stuff. And also you're making us look bad. Yeah, that's it.
Right.
It's interesting because that I think is probably like the number one lesson for a lot of Jews who don't come from areas where there are Israelis. I grew up around a good number of Israelis, so I was familiar with the differences.
Yeah.
I didn't consider. It's not that I didn't consider Israelis Jews. It was just I just didn't consider them to. They were like their own thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And
They're their own thing. They really are.
Yeah, and it was always strange to me the way that people would who didn't grow up around Israelis, Jews I met who were fervently defensive of people who criticize Israeli society and Israeli culture, and being like, what are you talking about? It's like us. It's a country filled with people like you and me. And I was like, no, it's like like a whole foreign country. Like, not foreign is like a bad, like, I'm not saying like foreigners. I'm saying like it's not the same. It's not
a completely
it's not even
different
close.
culture. It's like it was so and I feel like it was so alien to the American Jews that they just
yes.
And then I actually saw moments where there was a lot of tension between American Jews and Israeli Jews. I remember there was this one particular American Jewish kid who was very liberal or left wing maybe, and he was at a pool, some Israeli pool, and he was mouthing off for good reason. He was saying the Israelis are blah 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 and they're blah blah, and then one Israeli said, "Hey, you American brat." It's like, and then it was like, and I was like, interesting. I'm seeing some contention here. So I really had a fly on the wall view of what was happening there. And like you said, two different cultures, two different, and it was a shock. I could see the shock in American Jews' eyes, and just like I was getting the shock. But here's the thing: the difference between me and those American Jews is that I was getting immersed in Palestine. Like I went totally different way. I was like, I realized that, like, dude, these Palestinians, man, like, dude, they're like brothers. Because see, I grew up, I have cowboy heritage, right? My mom's side. I come from cowboys and I come from Amish people and stuff. So there's certain codes of honor that get passed down from that farmland, cowboy, Amish, Quaker culture that is all about like codes of honor. Like you shake your hand whenever you want to vouch for somebody, you talk about what town you're from. And that translated so easily with me with the Palestinians, where it's like the Palestinians, dude, their code of honor is like, oh my God, it is the stuff of legends. Like, and I have a story where I got the shit beat out of me by a Palestinian dude with a rock, and I almost it's in Haifa, and that's a long story, but there was what came. It actually sounds bad. It was actually a funny story, and actually led to a really interesting
evolution.
Hilarious. It's fucking hilarious. But I'll tell that story sometime. It's long, but the point is that the Palestinian culture, to me, I just fell in love with it because of how much it spoke to me on the levels of integrity and honor, and how they govern themselves in a way that's so unique, and it only can come from an ancient upbringing. Like it's rooted in deep roots, and that's what really made me fall in love with it. And what's crazy is I was fighting it the whole time. I'm like, I can't be this way. I'm supposed to be pro-Israeli. Fuck this. These guys are supposed to be the enemy. And then I'm just like, but God, it's so and they fucking would die for me. I mean, my Palestinian friends literally, like, they would put their life on the line for me. I mean, and I just like, I couldn't. It got to a point where I'm like, dude, these are my fucking people right here. I mean,
see, it's
fucking nuts.
Yeah, this is the thing about like the way you're describing this experience. It's so funny to me because I, just everything that you are describing about Palestinians in terms of like loud, argumentative, funny, hanging out, pranksters, and also like deeply
throwing shit.
Throwing shit. And also, deeply loyal and deeply moral. These are all things that I have historically associated with the Jewish people in the diaspora.
Right.
And I think it's true of, I mean, I think you'll find in general, it's true of most, cultures of people who are an embattled minority in a country to have that
Yes.
kind of brotherliness and that type of, just like attitude.
Yes.
And this is why, so it's like when you go to Israel, you see kind of this inversion of this, where it's like, whereas, the Jews in, any other country are not the minority, or are not the majority, they're the minority. In Israel, the people that are the Jews are the Palestinians. You know what I mean? So, and this is why I think a lot of American Jews kind of defect from the Zionist thinking when they go to Israel, whether it's on birthright or to live on a kibbutz or whatever, is because you find yourself relating more to the Palestinians and to their story than you do to the Israelis, who are, by and large, I mean, privilege doesn't even begin to describe, what Israelis have. It's not just privilege, but it's also this sense of, ethnic superiority, which is not something that, you resonate with. I mean, there are obviously Jews in America who are, have that like ethnic superiority thing, but I think by and large, for the most part, Jews in anywhere, just like I said, the majority of people are normal fucking people, and they don't walk around thinking they're better than everyone. And so when you go to a country that is filled with people who are literally the top of the food chain, and they're like, it's not just that I think I'm better than everyone, it's that the system itself says I'm better than everyone. It's hard to relate to that. You're just like, and I think some people get caught up into it. You might find that a lot of those American Jewish people who were, starting to pull back a little bit and going, oh, what is this? It's easy to be pulled back into that brotherhood because of this, like the way that Zionism plays on the like ethnic pride.
Exactly.
Like, we don't need anybody else, my guy.
Exactly.
All you need is the warm, brotherly embrace of
we'll protect you. We'll protect you.
Of ethno-fascism. Yeah. And I think
we got weapons, we got nukes, we got everything you need. You don't need anybody else.
Yeah.
If the world hates you, good. That's what you make a good point, because I had a lot of revelations being around that. Like and by the way, I was a gray man. I was in all, I got in deep with the Zionists, and I mean the fanatical ones in Israel, just to like, I would go to like, say like yeshivas and learn like Torah study and Talmud study under like very Zionist, like fanatical rabbis. And I would be, I'd be going to mosques at the same time. I was just a fly on the wall, but I was trying to, and the thing, and when it really, what you're talking about, the supremacy, the Jewish supremacy, like you said, the American Jewish students, they didn't have this mentality, and a lot of Israelis actually didn't. A lot of them seem like they didn't have it. They're just kind of like, I'm an atheist. Life is life. Right? And but then I would hang out with like these deep fanatical Zionist Israeli Jews and their yeshivas, and the shit that I would hear, I'm like, the way that they would indoctrinate other Israelis, saying that, listen, the world hates you. That's and the world wants to kill you. And they even used, and what really angered me one time, I was at a Kabbalah center, which was right across the street from the dormitory. It was called the Jeff Seidel Center. And the guy who ran it, they had a rabbi guest who was talking about the story of Esau and Yaakov, right? Where, remember when at the end of the story, Yaakov and Esau hug each other and they kiss, and then he forgave Yaakov for the deception? What's fucked up?
I don't know the story. I grew up secular.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. There was Esau and Yaakov. Yaakov became the the patriarch of the Israelites, and Esau became the patriarch of the Edomites, but they were brothers. Yaakov fucked over his brother by stealing the birthright from Yitzhak, and then his brother Esau wanted to kill him. He went to Lebanon, got his 2 wives, came back. He thought that his brother still wanted to kill him, but instead his brother forgave him and they hugged and kissed. Now, reason why I'm saying that is because Zionist fanatical Judaism twists the story, and says that he hugged him, but he was actually trying to kill him. And the moral lesson to be learned here, guys, is that you cannot trust anybody who's not Jewish, because they will, no matter how friendly they are, they will try to kill you and betray you. And I'm like, you just took a beautiful story, a beautiful Jewish story about forgiveness after you screw somebody over, and learning your lessons of no longer, and then you just turned it into a story about paranoia. Yeah. And then I was like, and that is when I was like, okay, something is fucking wrong. Well, there's plenty of things that told me something was fucking wrong here, but that was like, okay, now I see where this shit's coming from. This paranoia is indoctrinated at a young age, and you're teaching everybody that everybody wants to kill you, especially the Palestinians. And the Palestinians have to pay for all this shit. They're the ones at the tip of the spear being pierced by this shit. And that's when, and one of the revelations I had was, I was always trying to hook up with Israeli girls, like I was very misogynistic. Let's just say that. There was a security guard at one of the entrances of the university, and I was, she was cute, and she looked lonely, and I sat down with her and just started talking with her. And
she's at work.
She's at work on her night shift, and
you look lonely.
You look lonely, yeah, girl.
What's up, girl?
Like, yeah, what's up, girl? You look a little. I'm an American, and I'm not Jewish and all, but maybe you want to go to the Goey side, baby. So what's funny was, well, not funny, but here's a shocking moment was, because I knew like just about all the Palestinians that were going to university. Because once you know one Palestinian in Hebrew University, you know all of them, because eventually you start hanging out with their friends, you see them, and you just know their faces. Yeah. A couple of them walked by that I met, that I knew. By, I'm like, they're like, hey, what's up, Mark? I'm like, hey, what's up, bro? And I shake their hand and give them a hug, and I sit back down with her. And then after they leave, she goes, you know those guys? And I'm like, yeah, those are my friends. She's like, but they're Arab. And I'm like, well, the Palestinian, they're Arab. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We're in the Middle East. There's a lot of them here.
Yeah. I don't know if you noticed, but that's,
in fact, they've been here for a long time. Where have you been?
It's where they're from.
It's like this is like like peninsula that, okay. And she's like, but Arabs are bad. And I'm like, now I've heard of racism in the United States, but I've never heard, as a kid, I never heard anybody say the N-word and actually talk about black people in a racist way, directly, because I was sheltered. I was a sheltered kid. My parents were against racism, so I was sheltered from all that, and I grew up around black people. It was not a thing where you would talk derogatorily about black people. So for her to say something so blatantly racist was a shock to me, and I thought she was joking. And I'm like, what do you mean they're bad? Like all of them? Like, what are you talking about? You're fucking with me, girl. And then she's just like, no, they're bad. You shouldn't hang out with them. I'm like, girl, those are my fucking. What the fuck?
Yeah, is this a made-for-TV movie? Like is this an after-school special? Yeah.
And then, but the fact that she said it so naturally.
Yeah.
It wasn't like even a dog whistle. It was just like, no, they're bad. Don't hang out with them. Like, dude, like, who raised you? I need to talk to your rabbi or your parents or something. Like, we gotta have a talk, because I don't know. My parents didn't raise me this way. Like. And that was the shock. I'm like, this is Israeli society. This wasn't some religious girl, by the way. She wasn't some weird fanatical person. She's just an average fucking security guard chick with their. She's dressed very liberal. I mean, she's not religious. I'm just like, damn. Yeah. This is the whole society. I'm like, whoa. Yeah. And then I realized that's when, like, and mind you, I'm supposed to be Islamophobic right now. I'm supposed to be a Zionist right now. Right. Yeah. So I'm having all these little weird feelings going on inside me. I'm like, I don't like this. This is like that. I don't know. And that's when I started to question things. Where I'm just like, I don't know, dude. This is getting weird. And I fought it. I fought those feelings. And I'm like, no, I am pro-Israel. This is so
this is a test. God is testing me right now.
There's good Israelis. They're moral.
God is testing me by making me meet only the most racist Israelis.
Exactly.
But
So
it is I think it is a big shock for a lot of people, um who, if all, especially with Jews, if you're someone who's not Jewish and you meet, Jews, um and all you know about Jews is their history of oppression, then, you know, and all the only Jews you see in the media and whatnot are liberals, Democrats, capital D, like your assumption about Jews in general is against bigotry, against racism and stuff. And I think I see that as like the biggest shock that a lot of people have when they when they meet Israelis, is just how openly racist they are. Like in
yeah,
America, we have open racists too, of course. But I think most people's experience are not too dissimilar from yours, whereas like you have heard maybe more than you people say like openly racist shit, but it is not it's at the very least they like look around first, you know what I mean? Or at the very
mhm,
least that they make sure their surroundings are safe. They're not
mhm,
just
mhm,
saying it to fucking anybody as if it's a matter of course that whatever racist thing they believe is a thing. Like it's
exactly.
so seeing people kind of realize the depths of racism within Israeli society as being so like default, that people, I think it shocks a lot of people, and it definitely shocks Jews, although with Jews who um grew up with this or grew up around a lot of Jews. Like I know I grew up with a ton of racist Jews who weren't even racist in the like Israeli context, where they were racist and Islamophobic against Arabs and Muslims, but just regular white racism, where they were just racist
Yeah.
against black people, racist
Yep.
against
Yep.
Latinos and stuff. So I know most Jews as being not immune from regular white supremacist racism that we
Yep.
have in America. It's just kind of it's crazy for I think a lot of people who don't know that Jews can be racist. It's like there's this thing we do where we have otherized Jews in this country, and I think in a lot of countries, as being somehow um more moral, or more um I don't know, more liberal, uh, based on the history of Jews. We've turned them into something beyond just fucking people,
Yeah.
and I think when people realize Jews are just people,
Yeah.
then I think that's how we get closer to stopping bad things from happening, like in
I
Israel,
I
like
agree. Yeah,
it's
which goes to why I believe that anti-Semitism should
mhm,
not be given a special category, because it leads
100%.
to anti-Semitism. Like
Yes.
the birth of the term anti-Semitism is so problematic in its own way,
Yeah,
in
it's
its own
it's
ways.
already a racist term. It was
Yeah,
a
like we
a
got to
racist
quit
term developed by
treating Jews as like
racists.
protected species of bird. It's like, oh, look over
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
That's a Jew. We've got
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
very
yeah, yeah.
careful
The
around him, boy.
endangered North
Can't
American Jew bird.
exactly.
It
And
instead
it's
of
like you
tweeting,
treat all
just
racism as equal. It's they
yeah.
don't get a special category, because that will lead to other races feeling like, well, how come we don't get a
Yeah,
special
why are they
category?
special and stuff? Yeah,
Exactly. And
and that's
it's
the thing, is it's like I understand the categorization of like hate crime versus other crime and stuff. Like I understand the reasoning
yeah,
behind it, and it's always different in different contexts, right? Like obviously in America we are founded on anti-black racism,
mhm,
so I understand there being a special sensitivity towards that, even
yes,
in the law, whether or not it's right in the law, whatever your political leanings are, who
right.
I don't care. um but like the way in which we talk about anti-Semitism in America, and I think in the West in general, but like I'm not European, so I can't speak for their own like guilt
Mhm,
as Europeans. But like in America, we talk about anti-Semitism as if it is the same thing as anti-black racism, and it is absolutely not. And
yeah,
it is the fact that like anti-Semitism is brought up as like you said, a special type of racism that is worse than all other racisms
Yes,
is part of the problem, because the problem
exactly.
is we are once again otherizing Jews and
Mhm.
making Jews into this like yeah, I mean, just making anti-Semitism into something that is uh like if you have to choose between being racist against Arabs and racist against the Jews, you have to choose racist against Arabs, because there's nothing
Yep,
worse than being racist against the Jews. And it's just like that. It's just this fucked up mentality that
yep.
we have, that has been like fostered and like given more and more like fuel by Zionism and American Zionist institutions, which likes to otherize Jews. It likes to make Jews into a special category of bird. And
Exactly. And
it,
by the way,
yeah.
not to cut you off, but I just want to say, I don't think you realize how important you are to
Mm,
society by you being
so
you,
important.
by you being Matt Lieb, by Bad Hasbara. I
Mm,
do not think, because you're on the inside of Bad Hasbara, looking
yeah,
from the
yeah.
outside, an outside perspective, you have no idea how valuable people like you are in directing this conversation and having an honest conversation about this. Like, you are,
Yeah.
in my opinion,
Thanks.
I do see you as you're such a you're such you're just such a, I don't know how to put it, like a good diplomat and representative
Mm,
of those facts, because, and you do it through humor and
yeah,
Bad
yeah,
Hasbara, and it's so easy, it just flows in the ear like butter, and it gets people
yeah.
to really realize, holy shit, the way that they broke it down through humor is
Mm.
so digestible for people. And I just want you, just not to
I
suck
appreciate
your
that,
dick,
man.
but like, dude,
No, just suck away. No,
I'm trying to, I'm not trying to, but like, just understand. I hope you know that. I hope you realize that about
I
yourself, how
I
valuable you are in
appreciate it.
society.
It is nice. It's nice to hear, because it is like one of the reasons for doing the podcast was
Mhm,
because the conversation can so easily get pushed in directions that make that are self sabotaging when it comes to
mhm.
this stuff. And you know, I've talked about this for a long time, and I think there's never been as many people talking about it as there has been in the last 11 months. Of course,
Mhm,
it took a genocide to start happening, you
mhm.
know, or at least ramp up to a degree that people can't stomach it anymore for people
Yep.
to, for this to happen. But like, uh, it is one of the reasons that started the podcast, is not because I was like, I want to direct to the conversation, but because I feel like there's we've instilled so much fear around the conversation around anti-Semitism. We've made it such a no-go topic
Yep.
due to this paranoia about like,
Mhm.
you know, Nazi infiltration and stuff like that.
Yeah, white
Uh,
supremacy and
and white
getting
supremacy,
canceled because of it,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and people losing their jobs and stuff.
But that's
And
why I like I think you are, I wish you were leading the conversation, people like you, because the
yeah,
way you do it is so
digestible.
goddamn digestible,
Yeah,
and I love it, and it's like, and we're, because like you said, it's always like this, oh, I don't know if we should talk about that.
right.
It's kind of a
Yes,
sensitive topic, and
this is
it's very problematic. I mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's like,
Yeah,
oh God, shut up. Let's
this
talk
is
about it.
yeah. And like it took me a while to not sound exactly like that, because you
Mhm,
know, growing up, uh you know, obviously, um there was a little bit of that feeling of like even when I started discovering, you know, Palestinians existed and are human, I was still a little bit like, well, even if like 3% of the people criticizing Israel are Nazis, I don't want to be on the side of Nazis. So
mm,
I just feel like this is a better conversation to have in private amongst Jews, and you know, and
right.
that was the thing. For years it was just like something in private that me and other Jewish friends we would talk about, and we would argue about it too. And it was not no one was clutching their pearls when they would say things like do countries have a right to exist? What does that even fucking mean? You know, like people would openly, you know, amongst themselves talk about this stuff. And now, of course, people who say the exact same thing, but they're not Jewish, you know,
Yeah.
do countries have a right to exist? You know, people pretend to, oh my God, I can't believe you would even say that. You know, it's like you have 100% heard someone else say that who was Jewish. You're just scared because you're like, well, now that the world, it's like outside of our small communities of people talking about, now that the rest of the world is talking about it, you're afraid of where it's going. And I understand that fear, but at some point you need to grow the fuck up and man up and just be like, hey, maybe I'm not the fucking focus right now. Maybe my worries about a future genocide of the Jews is not as important as the current reality of a genocide of the Palestinians happening, perpetrated by Israelis, perpetrated by the Israeli government's funders in the United States and the United States government, private citizens who are billionaires and are making sure that no candidate gets elected who's against Israel. Like, these are things we need to talk about and not just be like, but I'm scared. You're a grown man, you know, like, and so, yeah, for me, it took a while before I was comfortable talking about this stuff with,
Same here.
with, and you know, it just, at some point I got tired of thinking that my own private little rules about what is and isn't anti-Semitism, what is and isn't acceptable for people to talk about. Like, I stopped wanting to be the fucking police and stop policing people and just, like, for a moment apply the same grace I would give to anybody on any other subject, you know, and apply that to them. Go, like, let me see if whether or not something they're saying, like, stop trying to fit everyone's criticism of Israel into a pattern of, oh, actually deep in their secret heart they are anti-Semitic. Like, there are people who have anti-Semitic beliefs that are based on just kind of growing up and having those anti-Semitic beliefs, that they're not necessarily like an unconscious bias. And, you know, this is,
and I say let that come out so that we can, because look,
educate people on stuff is also important. Yeah.
And like that's like I'm a big Joe Rogan fan. Don't hate me, audience, but one of the things one of the things I like that he says constantly is that he is a free speech absolutionist, and the reason why I am too is because I agree with his logic. Let everybody get out what's in their heart, and then let's dissect it. Because you cannot, it's the passive aggressiveness. It's the undercurrent that leads to shit like what we saw in Germany. Let's talk about it. What type of misconceptions do you have about Jews? Get it out. Let's hear it. And and I'm not going to criticize you. Okay, here's why you're wrong. Here are some aspects where you may be right about certain things, about what Israel's doing, why it's not related to all Jews as a whole, why you have some really bad Jewish people in high strings of power who, by the way, abuse other Jewish people. So Jewish people are victims of Jewish people who are very atrocious in their behavior, just as much as anybody else, if not more. So let's get out these conceptions. And that's why, like, the Black Lives Matter movement, everybody was like, oh, the world is falling apart. No, one of the most beautiful things about the Black Lives Matter movement, the post George Floyd stuff, is that people were arguing in the open, and out of those arguments came understanding. Like a lot of white people felt like black people hate them, and a lot of black people felt like white people hate them. And then we realized, like, wait, you don't hate me? Well, I thought you hated me. It's like, no, I don't hate you. I just felt this way. Like, oh, well, okay. It's the dialogue. It's the conversation. It's better to get up in each other's faces and argue than to have an explosion of violence or nefarious activity.
Or having people just kind of like decide the parameters of acceptable conversation and have something. I mean, I think this iteration of Zionism is a perfect example of what happens when you decide to make conversation topics like make them something you're not allowed to talk about, because like this was something that I think a lot of Jewish people I know, including myself, was like, we are not allowed to talk about this with other people because we don't know, where their secret heart is. And watching the amount of kind of like knee-jerk support for Israel by a lot of people in like liberal Jewish communities, like liberal Zionists and stuff, and then also just people in general in the West, you realize like, damn, I wish we had been talking about this for a while before a genocide happened. I wish we had made the conversation about Israel being an apartheid state something that was normalized, and not something where it was like, no, we shouldn't. I know I sort of believe, because I know people who literally have said to me, yes, Israel is essentially an apartheid state, who after the 7th were just like pro-Israel. They just everything pro-Israel. And I was like, you understand that Israel is an apartheid state, and now you're going to pretend to not understand that so that you can so that you can get revenge, because you're afraid of the fact that like people are going to talk about are going to veer into something anti-Semitic. You're so afraid of the conversation that you have allowed Israel to do what it's doing now
with impunity, which by the way is going to lead to real anti-Semitism directed at all Jews that are not 100%. At all associated with Israel. And so you create anti-Semitism by avoiding a very real avoiding a reality. And it's like you said, and by the way, if those conversations lead to some type of anti-Semitic comments, you deal with it.
You deal as with it
comes.
Yes,
you have that conversation.
You have the conversation.
Like playing tennis, you got to whack the ball as they come. Like it's
and not automatically assume that when you see that person's like unconscious bias, which is a prejudiced idea, some unconscious prejudice idea, not immediately assume it is actually very conscious and deliberately racist, and someone who is actively a secret Nazi. It's like, give people some grace. There are people out there, especially now, there's a ton of grifters who have always been anti-Semitic. They've always hated the Jews, and this is a perfect opportunity for them to
latch onto the movement and get all their hate out.
Yes, get all their hate out and sell.
They don't care about Palestinians.
They don't give a shit about Palestinians. They're there to sell you something. They're there for you to, sell. They're selling you a thing. They're making money off of you. That's their whole thing, and that's their grift. But most people, like I said, my worldview, most people are normal. Like most people, they might have an unconscious bias. They might say things like Jew instead of Zionist, or all Jews, or whatnot. And rather than being like, wow, you're a piece of shit forever and I shun you, instead addressing that type of thinking and trying to correct it. And whether or not you 100%. Can correct it in that person, who knows? But correcting it in other people by just setting, talking about it, just having a conversation about it. And I completely agree with you about the way in which Israel's actions can make people anti-Semitic. And this is something that I've argued with people about, who are just like, if this stuff like makes you start saying some anti-Semitic things, maybe you were just anti-Semitic to begin with. And I fucking hate that, because number one, everyone is racist to begin with in a society. That's how racism works. You're not born that way. You become racist via the society that you live in, whatever it's like particular form of racism, that is what you're going to be until you're programmed out of it. And
exactly
the idea that like that Israel can't make people more anti-Semitic, it's like they absolutely can, by playing on those stereotypes and then making like, every Jew complicit in it by saying we represent all Jews. Here's me a video of me killing a baby.
Just the very nature of how they title themselves with their moniker of we are the Jewish state.
Yes.
And by the way, when you have IDF soldiers beating on a Palestinian, they're saying, I, as a Jew, am doing this to you. So what he's burning into the impression of that Palestinian is that, because that's all their world. They're being beaten by people who are claiming to be Jews and being like, well, I guess this is what Jews are. Because that's the only reality they know. They don't know 100%. About the American Jews. They don't know about Jews like you. They don't know about all the other majority of Jews who are absolutely horrified by that treatment and actively fighting against it. And then when Jews do everything in the name, like when Israel does everything in the name of Jewishness, we as a Jewish state are defending ourselves against these. And it's like Israel in and of itself is an anti-Semitic moniker. It's the whole.
It is,
and that's.
And it's like, you know, to say, you know, when Israel does an action and says it's in the name of all Jews, to say that, like, well, if that makes someone believe them and say something anti-Semitic, well, that's on them. It's like, no, it's not. It's literally Israel is doing the anti-Semitism and people are buying into it. And it just pisses me off so much, this idea of like, you know, there's this purity that people have when it comes to racism and stuff. Like, you know, if someone says something that is, you know, anti-Semitic, or if someone says something that is like problematic in whatever way, where we immediately want to write them off, where I go like, no, please use this as an opportunity to educate them on why what they're saying is fucked up.
I love that approach. It's such a healthy approach, bro. And that's again, not to suck your dick a little more, but like that's what you are so good at, man. And I just I cannot overestimate your value in the whole conversation of Palestine and Judaism.
I appreciate it. You know, it's fun to do because it's cathartic, and the great thing about it has been it's made me feel like more optimistic because of the amount of people. Because when I started doing it, it was you know, obviously it was a month or so, 2 months into the genocide, and I felt like, is everyone else going as fucking crazy as I am right now, and watching their friends go crazy? And then, you know, and once I started, you know, talking about this stuff and doing the Bad Hasbara podcast and whatnot, that's when I was, all of a sudden, people were just like, thank you. I felt like I was losing my fucking mind. And I was like, you know, this is good. I'm glad to know that there's a lot of people out there who have felt like they're losing their minds. And that we are not alone, you know, and this includes a lot.
You're moving the goalpost too. You're moving the goalpost into normalizing having these conversations.
Yeah,
like you said, they're trying to pull. Like, they got so desperate to connect Zionism with Judaism. They got so fucking desperate that they passed a resolution. A resolution in Congress. That's how desperate they got. And I saw that as an indicator that they scared. Jewish people are that you can't hide behind Jews anymore. You can't use Jews as human shields anymore. You're losing your human shields.
And we need to legislate
the opposite direction, which I love, because you're defeating their agenda by making Jews and Zionism attached so that it will always be protected and Jews will always take the first hit as opposed to the Zionists behind it. And
Zionism is a fucking ideology. Zionism is not, it is a political movement. Zionism is not a race. It is not a religion. It is not an ethnicity. The idea that Zionism is inherently attached to Jews because it is about the Jews and a Jewish state is as ridiculous as saying like Nazism is the same thing as Judaism because it is attached to Jews and it is ideas about Jews. No, whether it's positive or negative, whether it's anti-Semitism or philosemitism, it is otherizing and hating Jews. And it's also, in this case, you know, like Zionism is about hating Palestinians, it's about hating Arabs, it's about ethnic cleansing and genocide. And, you know, the victims are obviously Arabs and Palestinians, Muslims and Christians, but also Jews, and not just Jews, within Israel who speak out against it, but Jews around the world who are now subject to the anti-Semitism that is being exported by Israel via not just their actions, but also their words and their methods and everything that they do, which is making the world actively unsafe for Jews, which is something they are okay with doing because it means that Jews will move back to Israel, or move to Israel, so that they can be safe. The idea of anti-Semitism spreading throughout the world is actually good for Israel, according to not just its founders, but people who are currently sitting in power in Israel. This is an anti-Semitic ass project, and
it is,
and it's bad, and I hate it, and it's stupid.
It's stupid. Yeah.
It fucking sucks.
Yeah. It does. It does, man.
I have my Netanyahu soundboard.
I want you to come.
I promise you, anyone listening, the podcast that I do, I also say some funny stuff sometimes, and when I don't, I just play this shit.
Tough neighborhood.
We got to get that in Colonial Outcast, dude.
Yeah, you guys got to get a soundboard, dude.
I got to run that. Me and Greg got to run that past each other. We got to start figuring, like, should we start taking some notes from Bad Hasbara?
Yeah, take some notes.
Let's not tell Matt that we're taking some.
Yeah, don't tell him. Secret conversation. Where did Greg? At some point, Greg left, and I was just like, he's probably just listening to metal and worshiping Satan or something.
This guy's he's getting pulled in a million different directions. So I'm assuming it's like some type of last minute editorial meeting from Mint Press or something.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, no, but yeah, it's no, I love what you do, brother, and I love hearing your transition. And you do not understand how valuable you are in the whole conversation and in the pro-Palestinian movement. Your voice is it's great, and because you're normalizing the conversation, and you're taking that goalpost and taking it way far away from what they want, and great, bro. And
also I'm trying to do it in and I mean, obviously I'm doing it like comedy and stuff, because that's my only mode of expressing myself, because I'm built out of defense mechanisms, but it's also because I find it also incredibly annoying that people it's like there's a lot of people who just feel more comfortable with the Jew talking about it, because they don't want to, because they know they're like, oh, at least I know Jews not going to be anti-Semitic, and I'm worried about Palestine and stuff like that. But there's also so many Palestinians who are talking about this who do not get the benefit of the doubt in the way that that Jewish people do. And it's like, so the only way I can atone for taking up space in this is by being a fucking idiot. So that's one of the reasons I also do it as comedy, because I'm like,
that's my whole existence on the Colonial Outcast podcast. I'm the dumbass who comes in and like, I'm like the dumbass. I'm like the POV of the dumbasses, the rednecks. Like I represent.
You represent the dumbass audience. Yeah. I like that. Like everyone needs someone who's going to be like their audience surrogate on the show. That's I feel like that's what I am too on my podcast. I'm like,
I felt like
Daniel will say something
almost
smart.
Felt sorry for me when I was over there. I felt like they're like, man, look at this dumbass redneck. Let's give him some grace. Let's give him some grace. I had a thick accent back then too. I had a thick country accent, and they just was like, oh. Yeah, so stupid. Let's take him in. Let's raise him up to be a strong, intelligent young man.
I love that.
It was great. Well, dude, I could talk to you forever. We got to do this again. I want to share more stories, dude. I want to hear more stories about your transition. Like that journey. It's because understand that you expressing your journey of getting out of Zionism is psychologically therapeutic for others like myself who also went through that, who don't have anybody to talk to about it. By the way, like I have yet to really decompress from that from that Reformation. I have not decompressed with another Zionist who did that. It's like This was kind of like an emotional support session in a lot of ways.
Oh,
And I
good,
need
good.
more of it because I don't have
100%.
anybody to talk to. It's a very niche thing because, like,
Yeah.
okay, evangelical Christian went to Israel, was going to join the IDF, suddenly met Palestinians, fell in love with the culture, and now he's not Zionist anymore. Who the fuck has that category? I mean, not a lot of people, but to talk to someone like you who
I hope
went
there's
through
more.
those phases,
I hope
it feels good, dude.
Yeah, well, I'm glad. I'm glad. I mean, for sure, like there's, like I said at the beginning, there's people who were for sure more Zionists than me who were able to get out of something that is a lot deeper. Like I am lucky because I for the most part don't have my family, like shunning me or whatnot. I've not been cut off from
Good. I was going to ask
family
you about
members.
that. I was going
I
to touch on it. I was going to feel my way into that one, just slip one finger in and then two fingers in and see how that went.
And stretch me out. But
stretch it out a little bit. But yeah, thank you for doing it for me.
Yeah, no. So there are people who have had to deal with real consequences of like speaking out against Zionism. Some people who have literally been shunned by their families or are just not haven't talked to them in months because of this stuff more recently. And then of course people who have been out anti-Zionist Jews for a long time who have had strained relationships with family. So there's certainly a lot of people I think that you should talk to, you could decompress with. And I think it's important to do it like on a podcast or like live, because of the fact that I know that there's people at home. I know there's people listening who have like this have had shared experiences and are like just happy to hear it being talked about. And so yeah, you're doing a service as well, both you and Greg. We have a lot of, I think, similar listeners. People who listen to
we
both
share
podcasts.
listeners. We have a lot of cross pollination going on.
A lot of cross pollination. Yeah. So like,
and like the just also, I guess me expressing this with you, it makes me feel less lonely in that regard. And I anticipated this episode for a long time because of how valuable I knew it was for me to kind of like publicly go through this kind of journey of our memories with you, because I wanted the audience to share that in that expression, like how the ignorance I had. And I'm very honest about how fucking cringe I was. And I want to continue to be honest because I want to normalize people
getting out of that.
People being able to say I was wrong.
Yeah,
I was wrong. And it's okay to say, hey, I was fucked up and I was wrong. We need to normalize saying that I was wrong.
Yeah.
And
not have it be not have it be something that makes you unredeemable too, like I think this is one of those things that stops a lot of people from growth is they're unwilling to talk about shit because they feel like their past makes them an unredeemable or irredeemable person. And I think normalizing talking about shit that would make you irredeemable in your head, it's good because there's more and more people out there. Like this is why, Zionists who fucking, fought in the IDF and stuff like that, this idea of, oh, well, they're trash. It's like I look at like things like Breaking the Silence, and you see like former IDF soldiers like talking about their experience, and there's always a certain cadre of people online and whatnot who are just fuck them forever, and I personally am like, this applies to all people, by the way. This is not me just having a special holdout for Israelis or Jewish people, but if someone is atoning for something,
give them that space to do it, because that's going to be a domino effect.
Yeah,
it leads to a greater good.
Yes, it is. It's an incentive. First and foremost, it's an incentive. If you're going to look at it the most cynical way, it incentivizes it. And second of all, it also helps, I think, once again, humanizing people in general is always good, and humanizing Jewish people I think is important. You know, I'm not putting that over, you know,
Anybody
humanizing
else?
Palestinians.
It's preventing the pendulum from swinging in these extreme directions.
Yes,
It's like what
yes, yes,
led to Israel becoming a state was weaponizing the sympathy and guilt of the Holocaust, so that we all just
yes,
accepted what happened to the Palestinians. It's like,
right,
no, we can't
yes,
have this pendulum
yes,
swinging all these directions.
exactly.
Let's just keep it consistent, man.
Yes,
Let's keep
yes. Nothing,
consistency, you know.
nothing is proven to me more, and hopefully to more people, that Jews are just people
People, just
more
people.
than
Yeah.
what is
And
currently
I
happening in Israel. As because no matter what you do, no matter what the history
yes.
of a people in the world is, you know, you could have literally thousands of years of being, you know, kicked around as a minority group from country to country. You could have a massive super genocide happen to you where you literally the majority of your peoples are wiped out,
Mhm.
you know, fucking deliberately. And still, if you are someone who becomes from the oppressed to the oppressor, like if you get power, if you get your own state and you get to apply that same exact logic, you will become evil no matter what. You
Yep.
know, there is no super morality in Jewish people more than there is in any other people. Any people who become the fucking the person with the boot are going to find a neck to put it on. and
Absolutely.
and so it's you know, it's important to stop, you know, thinking that some people are allowed to do that.
Absolutely.
And that's
Absolutely. Well
what I
said.
gotta say about that.
Hey,
Hey,
that's what I gotta say. Well,
Zenachon, you know, it's all Mashugana.
yeah, it is all Michigana. It is
It
straight
is.
up Michigas, bitch.
I love all your little Hebrew inserts too.
Oh
It brings
yeah,
back
I
memories.
yeah, yeah. I get them. You know, I put them in where I can, but I feel like Daniel is always the wellspring of all the like random Hebrew words. I'm like, oh fuck
He
yeah,
is.
that's
He
a good
is.
one.
He
Yeah,
is. Fucking kibbutzim.
yeah.
I'll do
Fucking,
that
that's
to you.
what happens when you live in that kibbutz.
Well, brother, I gotta go pick up my son from school.
Hell yeah. Thank
And
you for having me.
love you, brother. I really do.
Love you too,
From the
dog. I'm
bottom of
glad we
my
were able
heart.
to make this happen.
Absolutely, brother. Keep on doing what you're doing. And audience, go check out their podcast, please. And if I would make a suggestion, if a starting point, because it's always crazy when you go to somebody's Spotify channel and you're like, oh, which one do I start with? If I had a personal suggestion, is start with David Sheen's
Oh yeah,
podcast episode. Holy shit. Did I not learn more in like 3 hours than I did in like fucking 3 years of learning about shit? It was great. Great
Yeah,
stuff.
that
Check
is
that
a great
episode
one.
out. That's my personal recommendation. If you go check out
Oh,
that
thanks,
episode.
man. Well, thank you for having me, and let's talk again soon, dog.
Absolutely. Let's do this again. I want to do more of this emotional support
Hell yeah.
session.
I love
All
it.
right, guys. Thanks for
All right.
tuning in. I hope you watch. Let's do this whole thing. You better have. All right. 3, 2, 1. Logging out now.